Hi, and welcome to the Midnight to Morning video series, which focuses on the next 2,000 years in the life of the Bride of Christ, where she is headed and why. To guide us into the future, we will need a clock, a key, and a net, three gifts that are given to the Bride of Christ at her midnight hour in age-to-age timekeeping, which is happening now. So we will be using these gifts. In this video, we will discuss the familiar parable of the sower and the parable of the weeds in Matthew 13. Both parables apply to the soil conditions within the individual human heart. However, from an age-to-age perspective in time, these parables also apply to the whole of humankind. The four soil types in the parable of the sower represent four different attempts to bring about God's peaceable kingdom on earth during the eighth day of creation. So let's begin. The wayside soil is the spring season about 6,000 to 4,000 years ago at the beginning of the eighth day of creation. This was the first attempt to sow seeds which fell by the wayside, where birds came and snatched the seeds before they had time to root. Notice the sky where the birds fly and the dry land where seed is scattered. Jesus explains, the message of God's kingdom is heard but not understood. And so the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in the human heart. Now, the second season is the stony soil, and it's the summer season during the development of Judaism 4,000 to 2,000 years ago. Seeds were sown, but the sunshine scorched the seeds before they had time to deeply root themselves. Notice the image of the sun within this season. Jesus explains, the message of a peaceable kingdom is received with joy, but since the seed has no root, joy lasts only a short time. The thorny soil is the third season, or the autumn season, experienced since the time of Jesus 2,000 years ago to the present time of the midnight hour. Seed is scattered among thistles and thorns which overtake the seed. Notice the human spirit and flesh represented by the bird and the animal kingdom within this time frame. Jesus explains the thorny soil in this way. The message of a peaceable kingdom is received and heard, but the worries of temporal living and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it out, making the message unfruitful. Now, the good soil awaits the bride of Christ as she travels from midnight to morning. But at midnight, we must deal with the reality of the thorns in our collective wheat field. The thorny soil is the same soil mentioned in the parable of the weeds that were sown in the wheat field. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field, but while everyone slept, this is the nighttime now, while everyone slept, an enemy came and sowed seeds among the wheat and then went away. From this age-to-age perspective, we can see that the past 2,000 years have resulted in a mixture of wheat and weed in humanity's wheat field. But when the servants asked the man, "Do you want us to go and pull out the weeds?" the man answered, "No. Because while you are pulling the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them." Now, this is true of a newly planted wheat field, a young wheat field. But for 2,000 years, we haven't questioned or tried to remove anything that is growing in humanity's wheat field, even when we hear false teachings or question rules and practices that may be choking out the message of a peaceable kingdom. Because the instruction not to pull out the weeds looms large in the human psyche. But Jesus continues the parable of the weeds by saying, let the wheat and weeds grow together until the time of the harvest. And then he says this phrase that is repeated so often in Scripture, at that time, I will instruct the harvesters. Well, here we are. We're at midnight. Is it time for the harvest? No, but it's time to prepare for a harvest. So the parable of the weeds provides the harvesters, and that's us, with a distinct set of instructions. First, the harvesters must collect the weeds. That's right. We've got to start pulling those weeds. And then tie them into bundles to be burned. Now, the spiritual work has already begun. People have been calling it deconstruction, but deconstruction is really just an exercise in pulling weeds. So for the next 1,000 years, the Bride of Christ will be removing every prickly thorn and false teaching from our wheat field. It will be quite a job. But notice the image of fire in the human heart during the first millennium. This is where bundles of weeds will be burned by the fire of God's likeness within the human heart. It's a purification process. Now there's a third and fourth step. The third step is the actual harvesting process, which is a gathering of every grain of truth that nourishes the human spirit. And the fourth step is to bring the wheat of truth into God's barn. Harvesting the wheat and hauling it to the barn where a banqueting table will await will take another 1,000 years. But look, the four-step process takes place during the good soil, when the message of God's peaceable kingdom finally takes root. It is the winter season, when root systems deepen and widen beneath the surface of the soil. So perhaps we should trust the parables of Jesus as we see them speaking to us from the key and clock of seven thunders. Let's hope so. Let's hope we can do that. Next up, the star in Revelation 9. See you then.